You check your phone 47 times today. Each time, some small part of you is hoping for a reply. Nobody comes. For most of human history, this feeling could not exist. Not because people had more willpower, because they were never alone long enough to feel it. For roughly 300,000 years, your ancestors lived in bands of 25 to 50 people who saw each other every single day. No apps, no texts, no waiting. Just faces, all the time, whether you wanted them or not. So what happened to that, and what did it actually feel like to never be lonely? Start with the number itself. The anthropologist Robin Dunbar spent years studying primate brain size against group size, and he found a pattern. The bigger the neocortex, the part of the brain that handles complex thought and social relationships, the larger the stable social group an animal can track. When Dunbar applied the formula to humans, he landed on a number close to 150. That is roughly how many people your brain is built to hold in a meaningful social web at once. Not followers, not contacts, people you actually know, whose moods you can read, whose history you carry. But your daily world was smaller than that. Much smaller. The core hunting and gathering band, the group you woke up next to and slept beside every night, usually numbered between 20 and 50 people. The anthropologist Richard Lee documented this directly in his fieldwork with the Jew, Hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert in the 1960s. He counted camps, tracked who ate with whom, and mapped how bands split and merged depending on the season. What he found was a level of daily social contact that modern life simply does not offer. You were almost never physically alone. Even sleep was communal, bodies close together around a dying fire. Think about what that means for a moment. No door to close on your own room. No single house sealed off from the next one. A boundary between my space and everyone else's space that barely existed. Was that suffocating? Sometimes, probably. But it also meant something modern life quietly took away. Nobody had to reach out and initiate contact, because contact was the default state of being alive. Consider what your day would have actually looked like inside that arrangement. You wake up because someone near you is already moving, already talking, already stirring the ashes of last night's fire back to life. There is no version of your morning where you are the only person awake. There is no version of your breakfast eaten in silence, scrolling something, avoiding eye contact. Food is gathered and shared across the whole band, not portioned out behind a closed kitchen door. Even the walk to collect water or firewood is rarely a walk you take by yourself. Someone comes with you, not out of obligation, but because that is simply how movement happens in a group that small. The anthropologist Polly Weissner spent decades studying the same Jew, Hoansi communities, and she focused on something specific, what people actually talked about around the fire at night. Her research found that daytime conversation was mostly practical, complaints, plans, gossip about resources. But nighttime talk around the fire shifted. It turned toward stories, songs, and the kind of talk that builds emotional bonds between people, what she called social bonding through narrative. The firelight itself seemed to change the register of conversation, slowing it down, making it more relational. That nightly ritual was not entertainment, it was maintenance. It was how the social fabric got repaired every single day before anyone had the chance to drift apart. There is a biological reason this mattered so much. The primatologist Robert Sapolsky, who has spent much of his career studying stress in primates, found that social isolation and social instability are among the most powerful predictors of chronic stress in group living animals, humans included. A body that expects daily physical closeness and does not get it, does not simply feel a bit sad. It registers something closer to a threat. Cortisol, the hormone your body releases under sustained stress, stays elevated, sleep worsens, immune function drops. In other words, loneliness was never designed to be a mood you sit with quietly. It was designed to be an alarm, loud enough that you would get up and walk back toward the group. Now, picture the scene directly. The sun is dropping behind the acacia trees. The heat of the day is breaking. Someone starts building up the fire, and one by one, the rest of the band drifts toward it without being asked. Nobody sends an invitation. There is no group chat to check. The gathering is not an event, it is just what happens when the light starts to fade. Children fall asleep against adults who are not their parents. An elder tells a story everyone has heard before, and everyone listens anyway. Someone hums, and someone else picks it up. This was not a special occasion. This was Tuesday. This was every single night for 250,000 years. The anthropologist Kim Hill, who studied the H people of Paraguay, found something else worth noting. Hunter-gatherer social networks were not limited to the immediate band. Through marriage, trade, and shared rituals, individual foragers maintained meaningful ties to hundreds of people spread across dozens of camps. Loneliness would have meant something different in a world like that, because even if your closest band felt tense or thin on a given week, a wider web of relationships still existed, reachable by a multi-day walk rather than a phone call, but reachable all the same. You were never socially stranded the way a person can be today, cut off in a city of millions while knowing almost none of them. Here is the twist, and it is not a small one. Agriculture, the very invention that let humans build permanent settlements and eventually cities, may have been the moment loneliness became possible at all. Once people stopped moving with a band and instead tied themselves to a fixed plot of land, families began to separate. Farming rewarded private ownership, private grain stores, private walls, and private decisions about who got fed. The anthropologist James Sussman, who has spent years studying both the Jew, Hoanzi, and the broader arc of human economic history, has argued that hunter-gatherer societies were often far more socially and materially secure than the farming societies that replaced them, precisely because food and effort were shared across the whole group rather than hoarded inside a single household. The wall that kept your grain safe from your neighbor was the same wall that started keeping your neighbor out of your life. Skeletal evidence backs this shift up in an unexpected way. Bioarchaeologists comparing hunter-gatherer skeletons to early farming skeletons across multiple sites have found that early farmers were often shorter, more prone to disease, and showed more signs of chronic stress than the foragers who came before them. A more settled life did not automatically mean an easier one. It traded constant company and shared risk for private property and private burden. You gained a house. You lost a fire that everyone gathered around without being asked. And the separation only deepened from there. Villages became towns. Towns became cities. Extended family units, once inseparable from the daily rhythm of the band, scattered across greater and greater distances in search of land, work, and opportunity. Walls got thicker, windows got fewer. Somewhere in that long drift from campfire to city block, the assumption that other people would simply be present without being invited quietly disappeared. So where does that leave you now? You live, statistically, closer to more human beings than any generation in history. Dense cities, full inboxes, a phone that can reach almost anyone on the planet in seconds. And yet researchers studying modern social connection consistently find rates of chronic loneliness that would have been almost unthinkable to a Jew Hoansi forager sitting by a fire. The tools for contact multiplied. The daily, unscheduled, low-effort presence of other people did not. You have to plan a coffee with a friend 2 weeks out. Your ancestors just had to walk 20 feet to the fire. Notice, too, what replaced the campfire. A screen that glows in a dark room, held by one person, watched alone. It offers the appearance of contact, a comment, a like, a notification, without the physical presence your nervous system actually evolved to expect. Sapolsky's stress research suggests your body cannot fully tell the difference between no contact and contact that isn't really contact. It just registers absence, and the alarm keeps ringing quietly in the background of your day. This is not really a story about how technology broke something in you. It's simpler and older than that. Your brain, wired by Dunbar's numbers and Lee's field notes and Weissner's firelight conversations and Hill's wide social webs, is still expecting a band. It is still expecting faces every day. Contact without a calendar invite, a fire that people drift toward because that's just where people go. Modern life gave you reach without proximity. Loneliness, in the end, might not be a modern flaw in human wiring. It might just be 250,000 years of expecting a campfire that stopped getting lit. Think about how strange your own daily routine would look to someone from that band. You wake up in a room with a locked door, and the first face you see might be a screen, not a person. You get ready, often in silence, and travel to work sealed inside a car or wrapped in headphones, moving through a crowd of strangers you are trained not to make eye contact with. You can sit in a room full of people at a coffee shop and still feel completely unseen, because nobody there expects to know you, and you don't expect to know them. A Jew, Hoansi forager, would find that scene almost incomprehensible. Not the crowd. The fact that the crowd changes nothing. There is also a quieter cost that researchers have only recently started measuring carefully. The loss of what some social scientists call weak ties, the brief. Low-stakes daily exchanges with people who are not close friends or family. A neighbor, a shopkeeper, someone at the edge of the fire rather than the center of it. In a band of 30 people, weak ties and strong ties blurred together constantly because you saw everyone every day, whether they were your closest companion or someone you barely spoke to. Today, weak ties have to be manufactured on purpose. A chat with a barista, a nod to a neighbor, and for many people, even those small moments have shrunk as errands move online and doorsteps replace doorways. None of this means the ancestral world was some kind of paradise. Bans could be tense, conflict was constant, resources were sometimes scarce, and privacy, when you wanted it, barely existed at all. There was likely no escaping an argument with a family member, no door to shut, no room of your own to retreat to and simply breathe. The same closeness that prevented loneliness could also make solitude, real solitude, almost impossible to find. Humans did not trade one perfect way of living for a worse one. They traded one set of trade-offs for a completely different set, and loneliness was simply not on the ancestral side of that ledger the way it is on yours. So tonight, when you check your phone for the 48th time, know what you're actually hunting for. It isn't a notification, it's the fire. It's the 20 feet you no longer have to walk.